What's up, everyone? I'm Becca, and welcome to my channel. Team Preview is the screen before a battle where both players can see each other's full teams and then decide which Pokemon they want to bring. Team Preview lasts just 90 seconds, and in that time, you have to analyze your opponent's likely leads, possible counters to your team, their overall strategy, and so much more. In today's video, I'm gonna go over what you should be thinking about during Team Preview. Hopefully this will serve as a guide, and over time, the decision-making process will be like second nature to you. If you like this type of video, be sure to give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more VGC content. Now, let's get into it. First, you want to recognize the biggest threats to your team. Which of their Pokemon is the most alarming to you? Do they have a Pokemon that walls your team defensively? Do they have a setup sweeper that you need to shut down early? These are contributing factors to which Pokemon you need to bring into that battle. Here's an example. If you see Chi-Yu and your team lacks a fire resist, you need to prioritize taking it down before it sweeps through your entire team. This can include using Fake Out to prevent Chi-Yu from attacking, or moves like Light Screen that will mitigate the damage output of Chi-Yu. Note that when it comes to team building, you want to keep the meta Pokemon in mind. That way, they are not completely running down your team. Next, you want to consider your opponent's possible leads. If you've seen the team composition before, like it's a team that made top cut or it's a recent champion team, you have the advantage of knowing likely combinations. If they have a Pokemon that sets up screens, they'll likely send it out first so that their sweeper is taking less damage. Try to identify if they have a fast attacker that puts immediate offensive pressure on your team. Are they a Tailwind team or a Trick Room team? In this format, some people run teams with both options. In that case, you want to consider which mode is going to benefit them the most against you. If your team has naturally fast Pokemon, they'll likely opt for their Trick Room mode. If you run a team of mostly mid-speed Pokemon, they will likely bring Tailwind. Also consider if they have any field hazards that they want to set up immediately. Example being Glimmora. It's likely that they'll try to lead Glimmora in order to set up toxic spikes so that when you're switching throughout the game, your team is taking damage. If your opponent has a Pokemon like Glimmora, do you have a Pokemon that can stop their hazards? That leads into you wanting to recognize your type matchups and defensive switching. You want to make sure that you have good defensive pivots into their strong attackers. When I was running my Sun Koraidon team, it was a little hard to identify safe switches. My two strongest attackers were Raging Bolt and Koraidon, and they both share a weakness to Fairy and Ice. When they weren't on the field at the same time, it was important for me to consider which slot my opponent would likely attack into and which type of move they would use. You want to ensure that the Pokemon you have in the lead and in the back have good synergy going into this matchup, and the Pokemon you have in the back are good defensive pivots. The same considerations apply to your opponent. They have to be mindful of your attack options and make sure that they're doing safe switches as well. Field hazards are not super common in doubles, but they are something to be mindful of. Moves like Stealth Rock, Toxic Spikes, or Sticky Web, to name a few. You will definitely want to be mindful swapping in your Pokemon that have Focus Sashes, because they're likely going to be broken when they swap into these field hazards. You also have to keep in mind your Pokemon's typing. Your Pokemon's typing does play a factor in the amount of residual damage that they are taking from these field effects. A Pokemon with a weakness to Rock is going to take more residual damage from Stealth Rock being on the field. Some people opt to run a niche Pokemon or move on their team. When it's a niche Pokemon, it's a lot easier to identify the outlier on the team. However, tech moves are something you have to scout for. There are also some Pokemon that you cannot differentiate in Team Preview, Urshifu being a prime example. In Team Preview, there are no symbols to differentiate the Urshifus. It's up to you to figure out if they're running Rapid Strike or Single Strike. You can usually deduce this by the other Pokemon on their team. For example, if it looks like a Rain team, it's probably Rapid Strike Urshifu. Urshifu can also run a plethora of items. It can be Choice Scarfed, Choice Banded, Mystic Watered, Focus Sash, Safety Goggles, Life Orb. Did I miss any? For this single Pokemon, you have 90 seconds to determine which set it could be. And that one guess can determine if you win or lose the game. Now that we've dissected our opponent's team, we have to figure out what our win condition is. What is your team's best path to victory against your opponent? If your team has a designated sweeper, how can you clear the path for it? You may want to position your Pokemon in a way that wears down your opponent's team so that when you bring in your sweeper, they can just clean it up. In Team Preview, I also consider which Pokemon that I'm likely going to terrestrialize. Sometimes you always Tera the same Pokemon. It could be your sweeper or your strongest support Pokemon. But who you Tera ultimately depends on which Pokemon your opponent brings into the battle. Also consider if your opponent wants to use their Tera against you offensively or defensively. Here's a little riddle for you. Player 1 has an Urshifu, and Player 2 has a Blood Moon Ursaluna. In an open Team Sheath battle, Ursaluna is Tera Ghost. The mind games commence. Does Player 1 click Close Combat thinking that they won't Tera Ghost? Does Player 2 Tera Ghost thinking that they'll click Close Combat? Or does Player 2 just swap his Pokemon into something that can comfortably take a Close Combat? So many considerations happen when deciding when to spend your Tera. Finally, it's time to select your lead. Which 4 Pokemon on my team will give me the best matchup into my opponent? The lead I select needs to give me the best control possible turn 1. If you have preferred strategies for your team, selecting your leads is a lot easier and quicker. But be mindful, how likely is that preferred strategy gonna fare into this matchup? In unfamiliar matchups, you might have to experiment a bit. I hope that you found this video helpful and that I mentioned some key points for you to keep in mind going into your next team preview. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And I will see you all in my next one.